Welcome to the Inspire and Learn series. We are the Multi-Hull Group, a multi-award winning dealership in Australia, specialising in catamarans. Join us as our expert team teach you all about anchoring, docking, rigging, sail trim, maintenance, and so much more, so you can build confidence in your catamaran handling ability. In this episode, John is going down into the engine bay to show you the process of routine engine maintenance. Enjoy!
So welcome back to another Inspire and Learn series with the Multi-Hull Group. I'm Joe Fox, and today I'm joined by John Gamlin, one of our service coordinators from VesselTec, the dedicated service centre for the Multi-Hull Group. John is a rigger and yachtmaster by trade. He's got many thousands of sailing miles under his belt, up to 80,000 he just told me. So John, very impressive. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Today we're just going to talk about diesel engines on your lagoon. So generally on the smaller lagoons we're dealing with common rail Yanmar engines. John's going to talk us through some of the things that you can do as an owner to maintain your engine. Not necessarily regular servicing, but regular checks which you can do on board just to keep your engine healthy and to identify any problems before they become issues. John, just take us through the process from opening the hatch to do an engine inspection.
One thing that we don't want to have happen is somebody walk up and turn those engines on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're opening up the engine, and you'll see a nice bright red knob on the top of the engine, or near the top of the engine, and we're going to reach down and we're going to push on that red knob, and that's going to isolate the engine so that it cannot be started from the helm station.
We should add that that's just on these Yanmar engines. Other engines may vary whether they have that knob.
That's correct. That's correct. Some of them may not. If we ever have to get into that engine bay with an engine running, we want to make sure that we don't have a lot of loose clothing and what have you, because again, the last thing we want is to get our clothing or long hair caught up in those moving parts of the engine. So we need to be careful of that. And then as we open that hatch, we want to get a bit of an idea on that engine space, on how well it's been maintained, what sort of an engine is there, what make, but also is it clean, is the bilge clean, is there any smells and what have you that we become aware of, any obvious leaks, or whether I can see something straight away that I should be concerned about, whether there's loose fittings, bits and pieces in the bilge, water in the bilge, oil of the engine.
So it's a visual check first, and then what do you go into to then do a routine check, say a once in a week check?
Are you heading towards WOBBLE or not?
I am. That's exactly where we're going, John.
So I think it's a great acronym, WOBBLES. The W stands for water, for our cooling system. O is for oil. B is for batteries. Second B is for belts. The L is for leaks. Different types of leaks, we'll talk about that. The E is for exhaust, we're going to be checking that when we start the motor. And the S is for sound. We want to know that we want to be mindful of what a good engine sounds like. And I quite like the idea of having another S, which is spares, making sure we have those spares we need.
Now take us back to the beginning and we'll just run through that in detail. So
right.
W.
Okay, so the water system, these engines are cooled by a water system. It's actually a dual system, salt water and fresh water. So in the engine bay we've got a pickup outside of the boat, a through hull. Water gets drawn up through that through hole into a strainer, a seawater strainer, and then it feeds into the engine, and that water circulates around a fresh water system. And it's that fresh water system that keeps the engine jacket and the components of the engine cool. Down here we have our raw water intake, which is coming off the stern drive near the propeller. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn that stopcock off. As long as we have that handle at right angles to the flow of the water, we know that the water is off. What that's going to do is that's going to prevent the water running out from our strainer, which is way over here. It's on the other side and forward of the motor, and it's going to stop all that water draining out of the leg, because if that happens we need to then fill that strainer back up with water to prime the raw water cooling system. And if we need to inspect the filter, to see if there's any debris. There's some seaweed in there, so we can remove that. Put our filter back in the strainer, make sure it's sighted correctly, and then put that cap back on. When I went to put the cap back on, I actually wound it back in the direction that I would take it off, and that was to allow the cap to sight correctly before I twisted it on, so that I didn't cross thread that cap. But also we've got a water pump down in here. This impeller is not actually for this motor, it's just an example of what your impeller is going to look like. But a similar looking impeller will be in behind this fitting here, this plate. Now this is a perfect example of why we need to know our boats and we need to know our tools, because what you would normally do if you've got a problem with your raw water intake and you've checked your strainers and what have you, and it's not that, we're worried now that we've broken one of the vanes off our impeller, so we need to take this plate off and access the impeller inside this fitting. We do that by loosening these nuts, taking these nuts off completely, and then we'll be able to prise out the impeller from in here and check it, inspect it. With a couple of flat screwdrivers, I'll be able to get that out, and then I'll be able to inspect it to see that it's not damaged. One thing I would mention when you're doing this sort of work is you need to be very careful not to damage the inside of that impeller housing, particularly where you would see the housing has a slight bump. It's called a cam, and we don't want to put our screwdrivers anywhere near that because that's needed for the pump to work correctly. So we would come to the uniform curved sides of the housing, and that's where we would put our screwdrivers and gently prise out the impeller. And here we have our freshwater side of the engine cooling system, and so we've got a reservoir which is underneath the false floor in the engine bay. It's a little reservoir just like in your car. I can see the fluid, it's got a high and a low mark, and it's coming in here, and that's the same sort of cap that you'll see on your car. It's like a radiator cap. We can undo that, and we can have a look at that, and we can see our coolant level there, nice and full. It's a green colour, it's got the antifreeze in it. And so for the O in our wobble is our oil. This is our oil dipstick down in here. So we're going to be pulling that out just like it is in a car. And there we have our dipstick, and actually this oil is beautiful. We've just had an engine service done on these engines, and so that oil is actually quite clear. It's only just starting to have a tinge of black to it. It's got two little marks, so I'm going to wipe that off. You can see those two marks. We've got a minimum and a maximum. I'm going to pop that back in to the dipstick holder. I'm going to push it right down to the bottom. This is different to the transmission, which we'll see later. And then I'm going to pull that back out again. I'm going to pull it out, and we can see that the oil, thankfully, just after our service, it's right up at full. So our oil level is good. And the second part of that oil system that we talked about is the transmission oil here. This is the sail drive that comes off the back of the motor and down through the hull, and then we've got a propeller on the bottom of that, and so we need to be checking the oil just by cracking that oil filler stroke dipstick, and we can just pull that off. We can clear that out. You'll see that there's two marks on the dipstick, the bottom one of course being a minimum, the top one being a maximum. We're going to pop that in, but we're not going to screw it up. We're going to set it in, and then we're going to take it back out again. The oil on this is very clear, and I can see, I'm not sure whether the camera can pick that up, that the oil is just over halfway on that dipstick. It's actually more almost to full, so that's perfect. I'm going to wipe that down again and connect that back up. One thing we do not want to do is overfill the oil. Yep. That can cause more damage than running the engine with low oil, because it can build up pressure in the engine, which can cause seals and what have you to blow. So just as long as we've got between our minimum and maximum, we want to make sure that the oil looks like oil, that it doesn't look like milk. That would indicate that we've got water in the oil, and again then we've perhaps got a seal that's broken down between the cooling system of the boat and the oil of the engine and the oil system. We don't want it overly black or thick, Certainly we can feel the consistency of the oil too, to see whether there's any obvious grit or anything, but generally speaking it will be just your normal oil viscosity. It will go black, the oils, regardless. They only need to be run for a short time and it all ends up black. If we've run the engine, then we want to let that engine sit for a period of time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before we check the oil, because that oil has got to make its way down through the engine and back into the sump before we test that oil level.
Next one.
B for batteries. Obviously we need power to start the engine, and we also need the engine to be generating power back into those batteries. This is our engine battery, and what we're looking for here, it's a nice clean battery. We'd expect that on a boat like this. The connections are nice and firm, so we can give them a bit of a wiggle. The terminals are not moving, the cables to the terminals aren't moving, and also we've got no corrosion or anything happening on the top of those terminals, so that's a good looking battery. But if we find that we've got corrosion happening on these terminals, or these terminals are loose, we want to get our spanner down here, we want to nip those up. We've also got house batteries, and so again, same as with our engine batteries, we need to be checking that the connections are nice and secure, they're nice and tight, they're not moving, and that we don't have any corrosion around those terminals. Just like your car, if you see corrosion starting to build up on those battery terminals, then we want to get a wire brush into those, get rid of the corrosion, and then apply a bit of protectant. That inox is fine for that, something that's going to stick around those terminals and the clamps that go on them. Also, we want to be checking the connections to our battery switches as well. Looking at these connections here, we can see that we've got our battery isolator switches here, but these are some major connection points here that we want to make sure are nice and firm as well. You'll also see just over here, if we're having to work on the engine at night, our lights aren't on at the electrical panel inside, but if they were on and we're needing to work on the engine at night for an emergency, we've got a little trouble light here that we can just turn on to illuminate the area.
Next one, got another B, I believe.
Okay, so we're working into belts, and I've mentioned before that we've got we're generating power through the engine to put power back into the batteries, and that's via an alternator. So we need to make sure that belt is good and sound. It's not fraying, it's not overly loose. We also don't want it overly tight. The best thing to do there is to talk to your mechanic and see what deflection you should have there. But we want a little bit of deflection without too much. We don't want to see those belts flopping all over the place, particularly when the engine's running. On the front of the motor, I've actually taken off the belt guard before we started this video, and I can access these belts. Now this is the deflection we were talking about. There's not a lot in there. That's the sort of deflection that we're looking at. It's not bar tight, but it is fairly tight. There's only about, I'd say there's probably 5 mil of deflection in those belts. For leaks, we've mentioned that we've got a cooling system on the boat, water, fresh and salt. We've also got an oil system, and we've also got a fuel system. So all of those have the possibility of generating leaks around the engine. The engine's vibrating, the engine's moving. Components do become loose over time. Maybe someone forgot to tighten something up. So we're checking over all of these components. We're having a look down in the bilge to see that there's no water sitting in the bottom of the bilge, there's no oil sitting in the bottom of the bilge, salt deposits. The water may have evaporated off, but it's an indication that there's been salt water somehow getting into that engine compartment. Corrosion is another good indicator that we could have a saltwater leak. If we've got unexplained corrosion, too much corrosion happening, we want to find out where that's happening, and that's why we need to always be monitoring, keeping the engine clean, wiping away any oil leaks, wiping away any fuel leaks, keeping the bilges clean. If you do get leaks in your fuel system, apart from tightening up a few nuts here and there, you want to be careful. These are diesel engines. They run injectors, not spark plugs, so the fuel was running through fine, almost like hydraulic lines, and we don't want to be
very high pressure. Is that right?
Yeah, it probably is. I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know what the pressures are involved, but I do know that we don't want to over tighten those, and These modern engines are self-priming.
Yeah.
There's a nice simple way of priming, but they will tend to prime themselves. If you are getting fuel leaks, then it's probably best to get your mechanic to have a look at it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Leaks, basically anywhere where we've got hoses terminating, we've obviously got either some sort of fluid flowing through most of these hoses. So we're checking any hose clamps, we're checking caps, filler caps and what have you. Over on this side of the engine here are our filters. So we've got a secondary fuel filter, we've got a primary fuel filter over here, and we've also got an oil filter down here by the oil dipstick. Those areas, they're attaching to the engine. Again, it's a point where fluid is flowing through those filters and back into the engine, and that's a potential area for leak. We're also looking out for leaks on certain joins in the engine. So where we've got gaskets and what have you, we've got components. We may see a seam running around the engine, the top of the engine, or down on other fittings. We're looking to see if there's any oil seeping out of any seams that we see on the engine. Basically anything that carries fluid or holds fluid in, we want to be checking that for signs of leakage. So we're moving on to E, which is the exhaust. We're looking for water that's coming through that exhaust system. The salt water that runs through the system and cools the freshwater system then finds its way into the exhaust system. It builds up and then it gets spat out by the exhaust gases. So we'll see when we start the engine up, we want to come to the side of the boat, look over the side and make sure that we've got that flow of water being pulsed out of the boat. Okay, so we're checking our exhaust, the E in our wobble. We've got plenty of water coming out of here. The pulsing effect of the water is fine. It's where the water is accumulating in the exhaust system before it gets blasted out by exhaust gases, and then it accumulates again before being blasted out again. So that pulsing of the salt water is fine, and that's what we'd like to see whenever we turn the engines on. Okay, and the last of our wobbles is sound. We can hear the engines running. It's actually quite quiet. I can hear that distinct knocking of the diesel, but it's a smooth sound. I've got no bad vibrations or what have you. I'm happy with that motor. If I don't get that, if there's some sounds that I'm not happy with, I'm going to be calling my mechanic to come on down and have a look.
Yeah, thank you for watching, and if you are enjoying this series, do subscribe to us on YouTube, do leave a comment. We do like the feedback, it's very constructive. Until next time, thank you very much.
Join us in the next episode for more how-to videos so you can build confidence in your catamaran handling ability. See you then!